Damn it. Let's try this again. Ben, you okay?
I'm good, Tom.
You sure?
You keep asking me.
I'm concerned.
Why are you concerned?
Because you're getting larger.
Yeah, that's the idea.
All right. Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, we got Benjamin B.
What's happening, everyone?
And to my left, possibly your right, we have Aaron and Nikki.
What's going on, guys?
What's up?
This is their first time ever doing a podcast, so they're nervous. It's kind of funny.
We weren't prepared. You guys caught us off guard.
We're awkward right now.
It's the best way to do it, though.
It is. Because otherwise we would have been stressing all morning. Oh, we're on the podcast. So,
Well, that's the
That's the way
thing.
to
When
do it. Just
somebody
wing it.
says they want to come on, we're like, okay, let's do it. And they're like, well, wait, no, not right now. I'm like, why not? And they're like, well, because I want to think about what I want to say, and all the topics to bring up. And I'm
Never
like, it
works
doesn't
that
work
way.
that way.
Think about like a meeting.
It's like
You ever speak in a meeting?
With speaking.
When you watch somebody walk in with like a notepad with notes, you ever seen
It's
that?
the
Yeah,
worst.
yeah, yeah.
It's the
It ends
worst.
up they bomb.
they bomb.
But if someone walks in there and they're like, I have no idea what I'm going to talk about, it ends up
They come from
Yeah.
the heart.
it comes from the heart.
Comes from
exactly.
the heart.
Yeah, when
Yeah.
I speak and I don't care what's coming out or don't think about it, it's when I do my
Well,
best.
thank you guys for being considerate and catching us off guard. I definitely
Yes.
appreciate that.
You had the best of intentions.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
First things first. Thank you for tuning in on any of the podcast players that you choose. That could be Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play Music. Ben, am I missing any? You wouldn't know.
I don't know. Yeah, you got this on lock.
Yeah.
usually.
And also YouTube. Thank you for watching on YouTube. We enjoy putting out the videos to see all of our beautiful faces. All right, Aaron, Nikki, thanks, guys, for coming on. Appreciate it. Super last minute.
Yeah, Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's like
It works.
riding a bike.
We're winging it.
You do it once and, things kind of fall
Get
into
smoother.
place here. Organic conversation. But I'll do a brief introduction considering I don't know you guys hardly at all. Boca Recovery Center. Obviously, they have detox residential levels of care
Yep.
there. And I think a good way to get for this episode, considering a lot of times when people come on here, they're talking about their experience with getting sober, stuff like that. But we don't really cover in terms of levels of care, what the expectations are, why the levels of care are there. They're there for a reason. What happens when people try and bypass levels of care? How many times Ben and I get phone calls every day that are, oh, I don't need detox. Oh, I'm going to go ahead and just do it myself at home. And, obviously I have a cough. It never works that way. Again, apologies. This cough has not left me. So I think this is 2 episodes now that I'm hacking all over the place.
The other one was edited out pretty good.
Shouldn't have chewed that cough drop so quick.
All right, Ben, go ahead and start us off.
Start us off, huh?
Yeah.
Are we going to jump into their history at all?
Yeah.
All right. Who wants to start? Do a little elevator version of what it looked like out there for you. What got you to the point where you found recovery?
You want me to start? So,
Go ahead, Nikki.
I mean, I started doing heroin when I was 15. Fast forward, what got me to the point of recovery originally was my mom dying, and it was no longer about legals or any of the mess that I was so accustomed to, my whole life. And just wanting, really trying to let go of the lifestyle and finding myself not being able to and still backing myself into a corner because I didn't have, any support and couldn't fill that void.
15 years old. Where are you from?
New York.
New York?
Yep.
All right. And that's what brought you down to Florida, getting sober?
So I got clean originally in New York, and I had years clean, and then I relapsed and struggled to get back and struggled to get connected and ended up way worse than I was originally. Switched drugs of choice and everything, and ended up out here. I had no idea what this was, everything that was out here in Florida recovery wise. I just needed to. I realized that I needed to just be on my own and build a life around my recovery, of what worked for me. And I was very strategic with that. Ended up being.
How much time did you have clean prior?
I had 2 years clean.
And we were kind of talking a little bit before we got started, just sidebar conversation, and we were talking about how we get sober and life shows up, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was there anything in particular that brought you back out, so to speak?
I think just experience, like the first time being clean, you don't know how you're handling everything. It's the best you've ever done, so you think you're working a great program, but it takes experience, like knowing how to be honest with yourself and really seeing yourself, because it was the first time that I took on a lot that I never thought I was capable of. And like I said, with my family in crisis, I ended up having to, like, now I was this person in recovery that was capable of it, and let go of like what worked for me, and it became what worked for everybody else. And I kind of backed myself into a corner and took on too much.
So when you say, man, I'm thinking of a few people right now. When you say that, I think of somebody that I oftentimes use just a simple fuel tank analogy. You know, and Ben uses what I like, what he uses called recovery capital. The importance of building up recovery capital for when we're in these positions to where we have to start making withdrawals from it, you know, like a bank account.
Yeah.
The more money you have in the bank, the more secure you're going to be when you have to make these withdrawals. But if your bank account's empty, then you end up overdrafting. And I think that's kind of what you're saying. Like, life hit you. Maybe you thought you had a good program or you had a solid foundation of recovery, but when rubber meets the road, life happens, which is what we were talking about before even recording. You don't know what to do. And we always, 100% of the time, are always going to divert back to what we know best in terms of what comforts us, which is drugs and alcohol. Sounds like that's what happened.
Yeah.
Aaron, what about you?
So I'm coming up on 7 years sober. I'm
Next week, right?
Next week, April 1st, on April Fool's. I get
April
7 years sober.
Congrats.
That would be my recovery date. But yeah, I'm from Miami. I'm a local kid. There's not many of us down here. I've tried to get sober many, many times. This time I made a commitment 7 years ago almost that I was going to work my 12 steps before I relapsed. And that was kind of the way like I conceptualized things, is I'm going to give this a good shot, and I can work the 12 steps. If I want to relapse after that, then I'm going to. But like, I put the work in, I worked them fast, I worked them thoroughly. I feel, you know, I come from a good family. I had all the resources growing up. I was just attracted to the wrong things and sought out the wrong things. And that's my story. And you know, my life is full of just like half measures that amounted to nothing. And that's why it was very difficult for me to get sober. I never would complete anything. I would start off strong and then fade away, but never, you know, could I commit to something fully and like see it through and complete.
You just mentioned I like going on these little rabbit trails, because the very last episode we did, we had Frank Marino on. You know Frank Marino?
Of course I know Frank. He's a great guy.
Yeah. He was podcasting with us the other day, and he was saying he went through the steps really slow.
Yeah.
And believes in that. You just said going through them quick and thoroughly. You said fast.
Yeah, I had to. I had to have momentum. Like I had to go to my sponsor's house, read with him, go back home, redo the assignment he asked me to do, and then go back. And my thing was, I had done so many times where I'd get to the 4-step, would not complete it, and then would end up relapsing. So my personal experience was I wanted to hit the steps hard. I wanted to do them thoroughly, and I just wanted to knock them out. I did them in, I think, 90 days. And I was literally at my sponsor's house probably 3 or 4 times a week. And that was just my personal experience, and that's what worked for me. I was going to meetings every day. I did 90 and 90. I was committed. I was going to a 7 a.m. meeting in North Miami Beach at the West Dixie Club, and I just wanted to get it done.
Just jumped in on fire, pretty much.
I jumped in on fire.
I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I believe in jumping, getting through it thoroughly but fast.
Yeah.
You know, not taking shortcuts, so to speak, but like, I'm all in.
Yeah.
Like, I'm either doing this or I'm not. And I kind of looked at it from the same perspective of, I honestly, like I've shared on the podcast before, I did the 12 steps out of resentment to show everybody that it wouldn't work for a junkie like me. And I was like, in my head, I'm like, well, I can at least check off that box. I did them.
Yeah.
And I guess joke's on me. I'm still sober, right?
There you go.
You know,
There you go.
Nikki, what was your
I mean,
experience with that?
For me, went through the steps a lot slower this time, but I had desire.
NA people, you love.
Yeah.
You guys take your time.
But I had desire to even switch to AA to get through my steps.
That's what I would do. I would slide over to AA, work the steps, and then come back.
But it just worked for me this time because I really did jump in and I was fully engulfed in my recovery and with my sponsor. So I was still going like heavy on them. I was just a lot deeper, and I had a sponsor that I could really unravel different layers of my vulnerability and be completely vulnerable, that, you know, I could go a lot deeper and consistent with it. And that's been important to me.
So did you do the steps originally in NA? Or then what were you guys saying about switching over to AA?
Oh, because you get through your steps quicker.
Yeah, I was
in
just saying
AA.
that she could just slide over to AA, work her steps real quick, and then come on back to NA.
Yeah.
So do you do NA or AA?
I do NA.
Aaron, what do you do?
AA.
Okay, all right.
We didn't plan this out. This just like organically came up. But, and I wanted to bring it up when I saw the opportunity, because you will hear on the podcast with different people coming on here, like Aaron said, you know, with class, different experiences. I can't really sit here. Who am I to say that anything's right or wrong?
Yeah.
When the people sitting in front of me are sober with long-term sobriety, like everybody has their experience. I'm just a firm believer, like I always say, jump into it, do the deal. Like, you know, Frank in particular, because it was the last podcast, was sharing like he was always doing something with the fellowship. You know, it took him a long time to do the steps, but at the same time, like every aspect of his life, he was surrounded by NA people. So, like, is there a right or wrong?
I've been big on that this time too, is like whatever works for me and feels right at the time. Like, I don't know, I could hear what worked for you, but let me just see what feels right for me. And as long as I'm in a good place and surrounded by recovery, you know
what also
figure
helped
out.
me too? I started working in treatment probably earlier than I should have.
Ooh.
I'm not gonna lie to you, but I was working my steps, doing everything thoroughly. But as a BHT working in treatment and watching others and what, you know, addiction did to them and helping, I mean, it's not, you know, I think essentially with you know, giving it back and helping others and getting your mind off yourself and getting out of yourself. But I think that was a big contributor to me and my sobriety and my recovery.
In a positive way, you're saying.
In a positive way. And I'm not saying that others should do that, and I'm not saying it was necessarily the right way to do things, but looking back on things, being on the other side and watching it from, you know, watching people in early recovery and like being there to help them. I was like a BHT. I had probably like 8 months sober, and I was like reading the 12 steps and trying to read the big book to kids that like I was working where I was working wasn't the best treatment center. Not all the kids there were really there to get sober. But I was trying to like preach to them and show them like, yo, I'm doing it. I'm on fire. And it was getting out of yourself. And I think that's a principle of the 12 steps, is helping others, you know?
You briefly kind of lean towards saying that you don't necessarily recommend that in a roundabout way. What would be like the cons for somebody working in treatment too early? I think I was picking up on you.
Well, I mean, if you don't necessarily have it to give out, like if you haven't really worked on yourself and you're just like distracting yourself, you haven't really done any good work on yourself, then you might not be given the best message, or you might be distracting yourself from issues and things that you have to resolve with yourself.
And I think aside from that too, it's like when you're so focused on like presenting that you're this person in recovery before you're really there, it doesn't allow you to really look at yourself and where you're really at. So if you don't have like a strong foundation yet and you don't have enough experience yet, you get stuck in that, like, I have to have that persona for these people that you can't go through your own stuff.
Yeah.
I think the unfortunate part, and honestly, I mean, 8 months of sobriety going into work in treatment isn't that bad in comparison to some of the things that we've seen. I mean, I know kids that are in IOP that have job offers, you know, going to work at a detox center or whatever the case is. And I think it's, you know, I can't fault, okay, let's just take us all and, you know, we have 6 months of sobriety and we get offered a job working at said treatment center, doesn't matter. 9 times out of 10, nine out of 10 people are going to say, yeah, that's great. Because 6 months into our sobriety, a lot of times we are kind of on fire. You know, we're super sober. We're up on these pink clouds.
Yeah.
And, you know, or maybe we were on a pink cloud, it burst and we're back up on it, or we have a little bit of experience, but we don't know what we don't know type thing.
Yeah.
And the unfortunate thing is, like, treatment centers that even allow people to work in treatment with such little sobriety time, you don't allow them to have their experiences. Because looking back on it, I didn't know jack shit at 6 months of sobriety, 8 months of sobriety. And I thought I did. I thought I had it going on. I knew I was reading the book. I could, you know, quote you stuff out of the book. I could probably quote you more out of the book then than I can now.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have been what you guys were saying. Like, I had something to offer, but man, if it was up to, like, really having to have something to offer, I didn't, you know. And I put a lot of that, 90% of it, on the treatment center, because the people that get involved working in treatment with such little time, they don't know.
No.
You know, they're like, yeah, of course I want to work in treatment. You know, look at, I was there. This is what I did. And yet we go in with the best of intentions. Little do we know, like, you're walking into the lion's den.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, you know, so.
And you have to, like, it's to be aware of how to separate your recovery. A lot of people think that, oh, this is great because I'm helping others, but they don't know how to separate their recovery completely from what's going on at work.
Yeah.
And this comes back to different experiences again.
Yep.
So the reason I kind of wanted to bring this up, we actually, a few podcast episodes ago, it was just Tom and I doing it ourselves, and we were talking about when the appropriate time to start working in treatment is. And obviously we have our opinions, our experiences, but, you know, Tom was just talking about the lion's den. I think one of the hard things is, too, is, like, if you throw yourself in early recovery, and that someone like me with 6 months, I would have started acting like the clients, so to speak. Like, rather than having them come up to meet me at my level of recovery, I was probably going to take the elevator down.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, I'm, like, partaking in behaviors and attitudes.
You don't know how to hold those boundaries or what the boundaries even are. You know?
That's a good point. You don't even know what the boundaries are. Yeah.
And it can go the other way. Then you got somebody that's got 6 months of sobriety that's super sober and, you know, pounding their chest with the big book, and, you know, so.
I will say this, though. The thing that jumps out to me about that is you were done with your steps.
Yeah.
You know, like, I do see, for the ones that we see it not work out with, like, it's generally they haven't worked their steps yet. They have, so
they're skipping steps and they're putting on a persona, like, they know better and speaking. I did that at one point too. I would go into AA meetings. I'm like 30 days clean and go on tangents in the meeting about what to do with life.
Yeah.
And it was like, you don't know
because you don't realize how naive you are.
Dude.
You don't know.
But I was that guy. Like, shut up.
It's an ego thing. You know, we love to hear ourselves talk. And, I mean, that's why I started a podcast.
For the first time, we think we figured it out, and we see it so clearly. Yeah.
Let's get into more Boca Recovery Center. So you guys obviously specialize in detox. Let's talk a little bit about that, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to detox and the importance of it. A lot of our listener base is families and loved ones. They have people like us, all of us sitting here, including Destiny, who's off the camera today. Hi, Destiny.
Hey, Destiny.
They have one of us in their family that's, you know, shooting dope or, you know, taking benzos or drinking a lot, but they don't know. They don't know what to do. They just know that they need to get clean. Detox is always 99% of the time going to be your first level of care. Give a quick, and either of you can take a stab at this, the quick elevator version of detox, and then we'll just go from there.
Yeah, so detox is based on we're going to typically do a pre-assessment with a patient. We're going to get on the phone with them, and they're going to give us a report of what their usage is. And then we're going to determine, okay, this is a good fit for detox. Then the patient's going to come into our detox, and they're going to meet with a nurse, and then they're going to give a UA and another report on what they have been using and for how long. And then a nurse is going to make a determination of, this is somebody that needs detox, and if they do need detox, how severe of a taper are they going to be on? They've been using benzos for years, so we might give them a 10-day taper. Or they've been on methadone, they might need a 14-day taper. Or they have been using opiates for a week or two, they might need a 5-day taper, and they're going to put them on accordingly what would be appropriate for them. And yeah, whether it's alcohol or benzos, they're going to be on typically a benzo taper. If it's opiates, they're going to be on a Subutex taper. But yeah,
that's what I was going to ask. Define more of a taper. Like when I hear taper, I mean, obviously for us, we know what that means, but break that down. Like, what is that?
So it's basically, a Subutex taper for opiate addicts is it's an opiate kind of itself, and you're weaning them off. You're dropping their levels day by day by day. We're giving them vitamins. They're giving them sleep medications so they can get sleep. They're eating. And they're same thing with alcohol and benzos. It's a benzo. They're starting them at probably the highest level on day 1. By day 2, it's a little bit lower. Day 3, it's a little bit lower. They're giving them vitamins and PRNs, comfort meds to get them comfortable. And yeah, I mean, for the amphetamine and the upper people, they wouldn't be on a taper per se, but they would be given PRNs and medications to kind of like help them sleep, and vitamins. And
a nurse practitioner will check in with them every day while they're on detox and see where they're at and adjust accordingly depending on how they're doing with it.
Yeah.
It sounds to me in layman's terms like it creates some consistency, because you're on the streets. If you're shooting dope, there's like the highs, and then next thing you're in total withdrawal, dope sick.
Yeah.
Up and down, where with the taper, it's just keeping a consistency. There really isn't severe highs like in detox. Like the idea is not to get somebody high.
No.
It's to just a little bit sick, but not so sick that they run out the front door.
Yeah.
Is what it sounds like.
Yeah. Just to get them through it as comfortable as possible, lower the dosage so that they, can start cleaning it out.
Yeah.
Let me ask this too, because one thing we run into, Tom and I and Destiny, we take the phone calls for the admission stuff, and a lot of people ask us to bypass detox, and we're a PHP level of care. Like, most of the time, we can't do that. Like, because medically speaking, like, we want to know, we're not 24/7 nurses like you are in medical. There's not a doctor on site. Like, we have a medical doctor, but she comes in during the week, not there all the time. But I want to ask this: how oftentimes on the pre-admission screen is the initial phone call? Then you said they do another screen when they get there with the nurse. How often do those stories match up? I'm curious.
A lot of times they don't match up. A lot of times, whether it be the patient is trying to minimize so they can get through detox or residential quicker, or because they didn't realize what they were using, or whatever the case may be. So we have to kind of adjust accordingly. But yeah, sometimes it could be either side of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah, or sometimes they're trying to sell a story of,
or sometimes they're trying to get more meds. Sometimes they're saying, I've been on benzos for years. Well, you don't have benzos in your system right now. So how can we put you on a taper? So they're med seeking, or they want the highest. Oh, you don't understand how much opiates I've been using. They want the highest form of Suboxone taper, and then they get down to day 3 or 4, and oh my God, I'm so uncomfortable, I want to use, and because they're really trying to get more meds. That's what we deal with.
Or sometimes people are trying to like rush their detox because they think, I feel great now, like I finally got through the withdrawal, and they want to rush their detox, but they don't realize like there's another side of that, and you try to rush it, and 2 days later you find yourself where it's like, ooh, I feel withdrawals again and I need to use, before they even realize it.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, like, for us, like, we're like Tom said, 99% of the time, we're trying to get somebody to detox first. Very, very rarely do we make the exception. And the reason I ask that question, and I'll have to say to people all the time, I just used this line with a guy the other day. I'm like, I trust you. I don't trust your addiction.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and no offense to you.
Yeah.
I'm not telling you you're lying to me. However, past history and statistics tells me people lie to me all the time. Like, we'll tell them, if you're coming straight into a PHP level of care with us, when you get here, you're going to be UA'd and BA'd.
Yeah.
And you're going to be wasting your trip here if when you get here, all of a sudden there's something in your system you didn't tell me about. We're going to be doing a loop and going right to detox. And it's like, just be honest on the front ends.
Yeah.
And aside from it being like dangerous, they need to like medically make sure because it can go really wrong. But it's also so much harder for the client to like try to, rush through it and not have those few days to just physically feel better. Even if they mentally think like I feel good now, just having that time to get through it and get to the point where, okay, now I can get back out there.
And it's different person to person. I guess each case is kind of different. You kind of have to take into account, but there's also like a value to like even the residential portion. So, not every it depends on what you're using, how long you've been using, but not everyone's prepared to go to a PHP where you got to get up every morning and you got to go to clinical and you're working intense with a clinician. Like PHP, you guys are doing intense clinical work. And residential, a lot of times it's a matter of like, okay, they go to group. Sometimes they're processing something really, really heavy. Sometimes it's light. Sometimes you're just getting them stabilized on medications or whatever the case may be. Sometimes they need sleep. They need to get a week or two to get their minds clear.
Yeah.
So when they come to you, you're getting somebody that's in a mindset that they're able to process with a therapist. They're stable on medications. They're sleeping. And you guys are able to make like clinical progress. You guys are able to like get them where they need to, be at.
Let me point a couple things out really quick, because a lot of our listeners, I get first time people in treatment. A lot of times it's the mom, the dad calling. Yeah. They're not familiar. They're like, what are all these acronyms? PHP, IO, what?
Yeah.
So generically speaking, the levels of care, if somebody was to do it beginning to end, would be detox, residential, PHP, IOP, outpatient, OP. With that being said, one of the questions I get a lot of times that I'd like you all to answer, what's the difference between detox and residential? Because a lot of times people think that they're really different. Sometimes they think they're the same thing. If you all work in it, how would you explain it?
You want to?
I mean, so detox is like getting through the physical withdrawal, and it's a lot more medical. Residential is where you get more into the routine of groups. You start feeling better. Your mind starts to clear, but you're still you're still secure with being in a facility that you can get through that and see where you're at. So detox is typically, 7 to 10 days, and residential is typically like around 21 days.
Okay.
That's what, yeah. I mean, when I talk to parents on the phone, I just tell them, listen, detox res is going to take you from day 1 to generally day 30. And that's explain it literally the exact same way you did. Detox is gonna make you feel good, or not feel good, but not feel as bad as what you normally would, and then the residential is going to be, just getting you, like you said, kind of priming you, getting you ready for me and Ben. What you need to get ready for, Ben.
And correct me if I'm wrong. A lot of times, because people will ask, like, oh, when they're done with detox, where do they go for residential? And I always have to explain to them it's literally in the same building.
So it's in the same building, but it'll be like upstairs,
Ours is upstairs,
where they have, the group rooms and a gym and everything. And downstairs for detox is separated because they have to medically be treated different. They might get their meds in different areas because there's a residential medications and detox medications.
Back in the
they're
day,
checked on with their vitals more often on detox.
If you go back 8, 9, 10 years ago, there used to be just detox.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. You go in 7, 10 days, you're going to detox, and then you're going to go into, a PHP program generally. And then the whole res thing kind of came on the scene, which to me was brilliant, very necessary, because we'll get somebody from just straight detox, 7 to 10 days clean. They ain't ready.
No.
They're not.
No.
I mean, you got somebody that's got 20 years of shooting dope, and you're going to put them in, do a 7 or 10 day taper on Suboxone, and then put them in a place like us. They're not going to cut it, or they're still going to be hurt. And so the residential thing, I think, is done a lot of good.
It makes such a huge difference. I watch it all the time where people think they want to just do detox and they stay for residential, and they're in a completely different mindset. They feel completely different about everything. They're really ready for recovery. Whereas before they were just running to get back out there, and they didn't even know themselves or how they were going to handle it as soon as they left.
Well, here's another thing, and I'm sure we've all experienced this. When I did this process myself, when I went in, it was it was first time in treatment. I'm a one and done type, I went in, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do my time here and I'm going to go back to Pennsylvania. And had it been just detox, I would have done my time and I would have went back to Pennsylvania. But it wasn't until I actually sat there for a period of time in, the next few weeks and started in those groups and interacting with other clients, interacting with a therapist, and really starting to hear H&I, people were bringing meetings in. And I started hearing more about this because when I'm in detox, I'm just like, I don't want to feel like crap. Make me not feel like crap. I can go home. Yeah. I started learning and hearing more from people's experiences. But even then, I was still kind of like, oh, this is cool, but I'm still going home, And then the therapist and my dad, of course, concocted this plan of, you can't come home. You got to go do IOP, because I went to treatment in Jacksonville at Lakeview.
Yeah, that's
Lakeview Stepping Stone. Yeah. And I think I did detox, res, and I'm assuming PHP, because I was there 45 days.
Definitely PHP.
Yeah, so I definitely did PHP. And then they were like, well, you got to go to IOP, Tom. I'm like, what's that? What's IOP? And I'm like, okay, I guess, so they had this whole plan formulated, and I'm like, and it was September or October, snow's going to be flying in Pennsylvania. So I'm like, hell yeah, I'll go down to West Palm Beach, and I took a flight down here and that was it, you know, but I say that with, you got to allow time to happen. You can't just you can't go at this alone. You can't expect to just go and do detox and everything's going to be fine.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way.
So a lot of places, I have something else I want to bring up. A lot of places, like you guys do detox res. That's a good pair, residential. We do PHP, IOP. It's like some places do all of them. But one thing I wanted to bring up too, because Tom and I run into this a lot. People are like, a lot of our clients come from out of state. And I know that's the same with y'all. A lot of times they'll ask like, well, let me set up a detox at home. And I'm always of the camp where I'd rather them get down here and detox where they plan on doing their PHP and IOP for a couple of reasons. A, as you can tell, like Tom just mentioned Jacksonville and Lakeview, and you're like, oh, stepping stones. Like, as professionals in the field down here, we know these places. So like, for instance, we do some work with you guys, and we get somebody down to you guys for detox residential. We do like a door-to-door transfer. Yep. There's no room for hiccup.
Yep.
Like, y'all provide the transportation, bring them straight up to us, where if somebody detoxes at home,
I got to make a stop real quick and grab my...
And plans just deter easily anything that comes up.
And a lot of times we really have to like hit it home to families like, no, get them here. In your experience too, like, and I'm sure you probably have to overcome this more often than us. Like, people ask us, hey, what if they get sick on the plane? Like, how do you all generally answer that? Like, if somebody's at home and they don't want to get on that airplane because they're afraid from the time they get on the plane to Florida, they're going to be dope sick, or how do you generally navigate that?
I, honestly, do whatever you got to do to get down here. Like, I mean, if you have to use before you get to be okay on the plane, I mean, do it in a safe manner, but it'd be better if you didn't, but just get down here and go to treatment,
Yeah.
I mean, they have all types of excuses. And I mean, sometimes we've had people that they get arrested at the airport. They're drunk, they're belligerent, it sucks. But I still think that staying in your home environment and not doing anything about it is going to be generally worse. So, but yeah, I mean, it would be better if they didn't use or didn't, they could just tough out the withdrawals or the shakes, whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, getting to treatment, just whatever you got to do to get to treatment.
Because it's just getting on that plane.
Yeah.
It's just the struggle of getting on that plane. And like, the harder the struggle is, it's going to be that much of a struggle consistently the whole detox if you stay home.
Yeah.
Because
you
you're
gotta
fighting
lower the
it.
barriers
And
for them. I talk to, when we talk to parents and loved ones and stuff, and especially alcoholics, it's funny when, like, I'll talk to a mom or a spouse or something, and I'm like, look, if he or she wants to drink, you got to let them drink.
Yeah.
They're like, what? What do you mean? This is the whole reason that we're doing this. And I'm like, you don't understand. One, it's deadly. If this person is in fact drinking is the amount that you say that they're drinking, you can't just abruptly pull that from them.
Yeah.
You know,
That's why
stop
they
at the
need
gas
treatment.
station.
Yeah.
Let them get a tall boy or whatever and get them on the airplane, you know, and it's counterproductive to the message that we're sending. But it's like, if you don't, he's going to get out the car and bolt anyway.
Yeah.
So, you know,
This is why they need to be in a facility.
Yeah,
and
you know,
it's not
and
going to
get 'em into
just from the
detox.
decision. It's not going to go away.
I think this might be a good time too. There's other resources. There's sober escorts.
Yeah.
Someone will fly up and literally say, for instance, you have an alcoholic. They'll literally fly up there, get on the plane with them. They'll watch them have a few drinks because, like Aaron mentioned, you don't want them getting arrested at the airport.
Yeah.
We've seen that too. People show up to the airport just
Wasted.
which isn't good either.
No.
we had a client that he got arrested at the airport. He was like running through and knocking the touristy stuff out of all the stores, running through and, you know,
Smash the
Yeah.
glass.
dang, dude.
Yeah.
And
Doesn't remember any of it.
Yeah.
He went up to visit and then came back, you know, was on his way back and decided he was going to relapse when he was up there
Yeah.
and managed to get himself arrested and
Yeah.
all this. I'm like, holy cow.
If you can afford the sober escorts, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's probably the best. But if you can't, like,
I tell people, like parents, if you're going through this, just fly with them. You know, it costs you an extra couple $100 or whatever.
We see that too.
Yeah,
where,
fly with them.
families come they have to help to get them in the door.
Yeah.
You know, literally get them in the door.
Do whatever
support
it takes.
them through
whatever it takes.
There was one other thing I wanted to line up or mention too is like when people call Tom and I for PHP, I always mention the families, will you please let us set up the detox? Because the other point that I want to make too is like, for instance, like we know Aaron and Nikki. We know Boca Recovery. Like at the end of the day, it gives us the opportunity too, because we're professionals in the field. Like I'll just throw it out there. Like if we send someone to y'all, if I text you or call you,
Check in on them.
You're honestly answering 30 seconds later. I'm like, hey, how's so-and-so doing? They're like, oh, they just got here. They're doing their intake with the nurse right now. You know, we can literally get these updates where if you line up detox on your own, we're kind of in the dark. And I've been in those situations where, you know, the family's asking me to do everything I can to like be in touch with it. And I'm going through these case managers in other states. I don't know, all kinds of stuff. It's very beneficial to have that continuum of care. And I trust you guys. You know what I mean? I know that if I'm sending a family member there, someone potentially coming to rock, like that, they're going to be in good hands. It's not some random place.
Yeah.
I tell people that it's you know, again, when we field these calls and stuff and they say, well, you don't do detox. I'll just say, for the sake of this conversation, yes, I do. I don't physically do it here, but we have centers that are all within, you know, miles of here that do detox. I don't want you to mess with any of that stuff. You know, for the sake of this conversation, we do detox. You know, and they're like, okay, cool. You know, and then we just send it off, and that's it. You know, and they don't know the difference. You know,
I mean, it's just using places you're comcomfortable with. You
Yeah.
know? There's the whole treatment experience. It can be good. It can be bad.
Yep.
And, you know, it's our job clinically and medically to, you know, making sure that you guys get a patient that is ready for your level of care. So all the paperwork has been sent to you guys. You know what meds they're on.
Yeah.
You know what the clinician met with him, what was said, you know, general, that kind of thing. We're getting all the paperwork to you. We're in communication with the family. If you have a family that they are just really on edge about the whole thing and they would just feel more comfortable about being able to maybe talk to their loved one every day. Okay, no problem. We understand that, like, this is, you know, that maybe their loved one leaves detox a lot. You know, they just want to be there to be supportive. So with, you know, me and Nikki, we want to make sure that, you know, the program that is referring us the patient's comfortable, the family's comfortable. And then when we're getting you guys a patient that is ready for treatment with you guys, ready to work on some deep issues with the clinicians, medically they're good, they're stable on medications. Now your guys' doctor will meet with them as well and probably determine, you know, hey, maybe we'll take a different route or we'll lighten these medications. But I just think it's, the medical aspect in working with these outpatient programs, the PHPs, it's so important. It's so important.
And the communication is so important too, because like you said, if you send to a facility is reputable and you have a relationship with, if like mom reaches out to you that they're struggling with something, we can get on that right away and handle it the right way.
I'll tell you this, parents love it when I say, let me reach out to my contact.
Yeah.
They love that line because they know that like I know somebody personally there and it's going to get done.
Yeah.
And your contact responds in a minute.
Yeah.
They have an answer back to the parent in a minute.
Yeah.
They're like, wow, this is great.
I'm glad you brought up medical records too, because that's another thing. Like,
I'm on the medical records.
Yeah.
You have to be though.
Look, if you, from continuum of care sake, like I've had experiences where someone's coming from some random detox that the family set up. I can't even get their doctor's notes and their diagnoses and stuff that have happened in the detox. Our doctor needs to see that stuff. Otherwise, they're starting from a blank slate again.
Yeah.
You need that consistency.
Yeah. And something as small as that can mess up a patient's like the whole the whole thing, man. Like some people are on FMLA, they have a certain amount of time. They might have one shot at this. And then because the facility made a mistake or didn't do the paperwork correctly, now they come to you for PHP. Now they end up in the hospital. Now they're not really committed. They end up going home. It's just like, everyone needs to do their jobs and be on point and do things the correct way and make sure that the patient has the best experience with their treatment.
So for the sake of time, last thing, I know you guys have multiple centers, or I think there's a few anyway.
3.
Go ahead and talk about, or where are those at? What are they? Stuff like that.
Yeah. So we have Pompano Beach is our detox res. It's been around. It's the longest. It's 45 beds. Then we opened New Jersey, which is 22 beds, and that's Detox and Residential.
That's brand new, right?
That one's like 2 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I mean, brand new. Wasn't the building new, or was it built?
No, it was. I want to say like an old medical.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's 22 beds. We're gonna add to that property. We're gonna make it like a whole residential.
Yeah.
Kind of like campus.
Cool.
So, but yeah, that's in South Jersey. It's a great facility. It's a small facility. Really good client to therapist ratio. There's 3 therapists to 22 client.
Nice.
So yeah, and then we recently, like 4 months ago, opened up in Bloomington, Indiana, and that's 35 beds. And we're going to open another facility in Indiana, and that facility, like, I don't know if it's just culture wise, but like those BHTs, those medical staff there, the clinical staff, they're just like excited about recovery. Like, just everyone is really excited about recovery. They are all involved. If a patient wants to leave, the BHT's on them, the nurses are on them, the clinicians are on them. They are just really, really, really enthusiastic about recovery in general. So it's been cool.
That's cool to hear that that's happening in Indiana. Because we'll just call it what it is. We talk about it all the time. There's certain pockets in the U.S. where the recovery is way stronger than other places.
Yeah.
I mean, down here, they used to refer to it, and I think it still is, like the capital of the world for recovery capital of the world.
Yeah.
And like that the thing with the aftercare, like the PHP IOP, there's a meeting on every freaking corner.
Yeah.
Like at every hour of the day.
Yeah.
You know, and another place in the US, a lot of times, and I've talked about this before, like I feel bad if someone's in, the middle of nowhere, USA.
Yeah.
And you show them all this stuff, and then
it's just not an option in many places.
There's not a culture.
There's not meetings all the time. There's not a lot of like work opportunities. People rush back to get home.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not the right move.
Mm-hmm.
It's
and
just
that's the thing too, because I set people up with aftercare, and they're like, I have to, go home. I'm going to find all what you're talking about at home, and I'm like, it's not a thing there.
It doesn't exist.
Yeah, I love. I mean, I don't say I love, but like it just happens more often than not where I got to rush back because I got to provide for my family. I got to get back to this job. Meanwhile, you call us back a month after you being discharged, and you're on this brutal run. You have no money now. Your family dislikes you even more because you rushed back into things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I feel like sometimes we're treating like it's like children. It's like they don't know what's best for them if they would just allow us to help them. But like, just throw the white flag in, like take some suggestions, take some advice.
Yeah.
You know,
Do you see I think I know the answer to this, but for the listeners, do you see a higher recidivism rate to detox when people don't do all levels of care?
Absolutely. And like it's kind of messed up because there's a lot of different people you encounter in a situation. Some people legitimately do need to get back to work, and some people, when you set them up for IOP or meetings back at home, they will legitimately go through with them, but the majority won't. They will relapse. That's just the way it is. So I think, you know.
And that's what I talk about with clients all the time. It's like once we're in treatment, we have this like idea, this fantasy about like all our responsibilities and wanting to rush back into them and having to, and not really seeing the reality of like, that was all a mess and we can't handle it, like rushing back into it already, or it's not as it seems while we're like in inpatient. And even like with setting up aftercare, it's like while you're in, if you ask me what the best plan was when I was in detox, it was completely off and I could not, like my mind wasn't clear yet. And see how you feel when you get out of inpatient, like gauge yourself, because you might feel great right now. You've been in treatment for a few weeks. You feel better than you ever have, but you don't know how you're going to feel when you get out of that, like, you know, that security blanket. Like gauge yourself, give yourself a chance to see how you do, like with that information on outside.
I'll throw this out there. This is my opinion based off watching this process for 10 plus years. Crazy comes out in detox because people are sick and not feeling well, and that's addiction at its height. And then also an IOP, which is one of the lowest levels of care, because that's when real life starts to hit. I'm kind of hearing you talk about like the pink cloud, so to speak, like this fantasy that you said, like that this is what I'm going to do. It's going to be great. And that's all fine and dandy to have those ideas, but like
see how you actually apply it.
Yeah, I really believe that what people don't practice here, they're not going to go home and just start doing.
Yeah.
That was fun, Ben.
It was.
Yeah.
I feel like amped.
Good talk.
Let's
too. Yeah,
This is great.
Told you guys would do great.
Yeah.
Destiny, how'd we do?
Good, right?
Where can people find you as far as the website goes? What is Boca Recovery?
www.bocarecoverycenter.com. We have a list, a tab of all of our locations.
Okay.
You can take a look at the actual facility, the bedrooms, the cafeteria, everything. There's a list of our staff. If you have any questions or loved one that needs help, call us.
Yeah. Or call us, and then we'll call
Or call
them.
Rock Recovery and
No,
don't
I'm
call
just
us.
kidding. Just mention Real Recovery Talk. Everybody knows everybody. But no, we really appreciate you guys coming on very last minute. And, you know, for the listeners, I'm sure they at least have a better understanding now as to what Detox Residential is for. And most importantly, the importance of it. You know, you can't bypass it. And some people don't meet criteria, but that's for a different topic. And it's probably one out of every, I don't know, 20.
Yeah.
You know, most people meet criteria. Unless you're just, you know, smoking on the devil's lettuce once in a while. You're probably not going to meet criteria. But thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
All right. That is it for this episode of Real Recovery Talk. Thank you for tuning in the end. If you'd like to reach out to us, you could always email us, Tom@realrecoverytalk.com and Ben@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, Ben, what we're trying to do is turn your mess into your message. That is it. We will see y'all later.
You almost got me.
I know.